Childhood amnesia. Gotta give points to the writer of The Promised Neverland. I didn't think we would have something that actually is a real thing added to the series to explain some things. That's truly shocking. Wow. So, childhood amnesia explains what was going on with Ray and how he remembers some things from the past, but also why he didn't understand at first, but then he eventually did when he grew older. It's very fascinating stuff, because it is a legit thing. Majority of children forget everything from their early days, from when they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you forget those memories. I mean, you might have some select few memories, but overall, majority of people, they forget. They do. I mean, I have some memories from when I was 1 or 2. I remember some things. I remember when I was like, I think I was 1.5 or 2, I remember, like, I encountered, like, a snake or whatever, like this big ass like green snake. I was very tiny, like I was small as hell, but I remember seeing this like big ass green snake, and I looked at it in the distance and it stared back at me, and I remember running into the house being scared, and I asked my dad, like, Dad, there's a little snake and all that, or this big ass snake. Not little, to me it was big. I'm like, there's a big snake and all that, it's scary and all that, and he went outside and the snake was gone. But I remember that vividly in my mind, and that kind of explains childhood amnesia. For one, majority of us forget memories, but depending on like certain things you encounter, things that shock you or things that really hold a lot of emotions to you, you tend to probably hold on and latch on to that memory and not forget it. That's how we usually store memories when we're a kid, and you remember those certain things because of how you felt at that time. And this is kind of what was going on with Ray. Apparently there's some rare cases to where you can actually remember a lot of stuff when you're a kid, when you're before 1 year old, which I'm going to assume something like this possibly has happened in real life. I need to do a little bit more research on that, but I want to assume there is probably people out there that do remember things from before they were 1. And Ray states he remembers bits and pieces before he was 1 year old. He remembers some things, he doesn't remember everything, but he remembers some things. He remembers certain parts about before he was 1 year old. He remembered, like certain little details about, how he was in a crib, to how, he was arranged through groups of 5, and at the time, he didn't really know what was going on, because he was a child, and he didn't really comprehend everything, because he hasn't learned anything. And as it's stated in the chapter, that when he actually was able to read and understand how the world worked, that's when he started putting the pieces together and realized what was really happening here. He realized this world that he's currently seeing is actually a false world, and what he really saw was something that was much darker, really, really grim. And so this explains why at first he didn't understand, but now why he does. Because let's put this in perspective, okay? He remembered everything. He remembered the demons, he remembered having the tracker put into his ear, he remembered all that, he remembered certain emotions, and you gotta remember, like I already said in this video, a lot of us when we're a child, or even right now, usually you'll remember something because of the intense emotion you felt at the time. Maybe joy, happiness, maybe anger, envy, whatever. Usually you might actually remember things because of certain emotions you felt at that time. Powerful emotions. And you gotta remember, when he was a kid and he first, I came out of his mother, you gotta remember, he got a fucking, tracker put into his ear. That's gonna be painful. That's gonna be really, really painful. I mean, the way you just saw the way it looked in this chapter, they just went up to the child's ear, boop, put it right in. That fucking probably had to hurt. The baby's gonna be screaming. And so, if you have memory that can kind of remember things, like you can remember certain events, or you already have this like childhood amnesia to where you can kind of remember more things, that would mean that obviously, since you had so much pain at that moment, you would remember that. So it explains why Ray was able to remember that one scene, that pain he felt, because that it had so much emotion behind it. He realized how much it hurt him, he didn't like it, and that's why he was able to remember that scene and why it was just so vivid for him. Now, another thing we need to realize is, at the time when people were talking or different things, obviously he couldn't understand them. He didn't know what they were saying. And remember what he said in this chapter, he saw bits and pieces and he really never understood what was really happening in his memories. He didn't know if he made them up, or he didn't know what was really going on, because they never made any sense at all to him. And then when he was able to read and all that, he started understanding what they were saying. He went back to his memories and he realized, holy shit, this is what they were saying, this is what was, going on, and it all came to him, and he's like, okay, so this was what was going on. So throughout majority, or actually all of Ray's life, he was already well aware that there's something wrong here. He was very aware, but he became really aware at the age of 4, and he started realizing what was going on. So, throughout his life, he's actually been holding on to this secret by himself. So, it's a very lonely life when you think about holding on to this secret for so many years, knowing kind of the truth and all that. That's pretty fucked. It really is. So, besides that, I want to talk about the situation with how Norman disappeared. So, this man, the plan initiates, and apparently he's gonna, just be hiding out and all that, and disappearing. He finds the pin at the end of the chapter, which we know is gonna hold a lot of, importance in this arc for them escaping. We know Sister Crone, she left that behind. That was like her last will and testament, and that's probably gonna be something very valuable. Maybe this arc or the next arc or whatever, we'll see where the future takes us, but it's definitely going to be important. It's a really critical plot point for the series, and Norman discovered this. He's like, what is this? And then right after that, the day goes on and all that, everything seems fine, and then it says Norman has disappeared. And I find that very, very weird, because let's think about how you can actually interpret that. Norman has disappeared. It didn't say Norman escaped. It didn't say, he got out and all that and everything is fine and he's hiding out. They didn't say that. The mangaka did not say that at all, which that's the suspicious part, because when you think about it, he disappeared can mean a variety of things. It can mean that he did get out and he, managed to be safe or whatever, or he was caught and he was shipped off. Killed, whatever. I mean, it's very, very vague, and that has me worried when I see that panel at the end of the chapter, like, is Norman okay? Because the way that was written, there's a very likely possibility he might be dead as fuck. I mean, hey, because that's the way it looks. I mean, we do know one of these kids are gonna die. It's just, we know one of our 3 will probably die before the series is done, so maybe Norman's the first to go. I mean, he's had a lot of death flags and all that. There is a likely possibility that did happen. Anyways, though, let's talk about Phil. The little asshole that we know is this man's planning and scheming so much shit. So there is a panel in this chapter I want to point out. Actually, 2 panels. Number 1, the obvious Phil panel to where he found out that Norman was leaving. He's like, he's leaving? And you just saw his face. He was just so shocked. He's like, you just saw like it was a different face. It wasn't a happy face or anything like that. What the face Phil made in that scene was just like a face he realized, oh shit, is something wrong here, something going on, something that's not going according to plan. You just saw the way his face looked. It didn't seem like a face that was really happy for Norman, or a face that was like crying or sad either. It just felt like a very neutral reaction from Phil, judging by how he's constantly reacted to other scenes throughout the series. He's always shown a happy face where he's like, yay, and all that type of shit, but this kid straight up just like very neutral. He's like, oh, he's leaving? Like, he doesn't seem like he's sad or happy, and I'm like, what's going on here? That's shady as fuck, because Phil knows shit. Like, we know this. We know this kid knows shit. But then, let's go even one step further. So, I don't know if it really was or not, but there was a panel with the ropes when Dawn and Gilda, when they were, making new ropes and shit. If you look in the right part of that panel, I forget what page it is, but you can go to the page to when Ray is talking about the ropes and stuff, how they're remaking ropes, and you go to that panel, you'll see Dawn and Gilda, they're making ropes and stuff, and if you look very closely on the right part, top right of the panel, you'll see a little kid that looks, oddly enough, just like Phil. Looks just like Phil. So, Phil's watching them make fucking ropes. Like, oh my god, this kid, that kid definitely knows some shit. That kid knows a lot of shit. But anyways, though, okay, let's just talk about the stuff with, I guess, the tracker and how, Ray is handling this. So, after all of these years, Ray has been figuring out a way to disable the tracker, and he's kind of made like a taser device to where he can kind of short-circuit the tracker without really causing any injuries at all to the ear, which that's very good. That's a very good idea, because that was something that concerned me, and what was concerning me about Emma in the first place because of her leg. If they had to escape right then and there, that's gonna, get really bad. Her leg might not heal properly because she's not, being able to rest properly. And so that would have been very bad for her if she had to go on the run and start to escape while her leg was fucking broken. So I was concerned about that, but I was also concerned about them, ripping out the trackers out of their ear, because that's going to be an open fucking wound. You got to realize, slicing out a part of your ear to get a tracker out, that's gonna get infected. Like, legit, that's gonna get infected. And if they're on the run, or out in the woods and shit, dirt and all that, trying to hide, that shit's, yeah, they're gonna get infected. So, because of that, I was concerned, but it seems like Ray put a lot of thought into this. He's been thinking about it for many, many years now, to trying to figure out a way to where he can disable the trackers, and it can be safe. And because of this, he was constantly asking for trades from Isabel for different items, and he's putting all these items together before he can make a taser to disable the trackers. So, very good stuff. I really like how Ray was very, very smart in how he used his brain to overcome this situation. I respect that from his character, and what he's been doing all these years to set it up for this very moment. But, let's talk about one scene when it came to the trackers. In general, I don't know how many noticed this or not, because you could easily not notice this. I didn't notice it the first time I read the chapter. Actually, even the second time I read the chapter, which was yesterday, I didn't notice either. I read it twice yesterday. I didn't notice the first two times. I reread it today, like right before I'm, doing this video. I reread it, and in the actual panel when Ray initiates the trade, like, hey, let's trade and all that, you could see Ray scratching the fuck out of his ear. You see scratch marks on his ear, like, he was really just scratching the hell out of it. And because of this, it shows that he was really worried about the tracker, and he put a lot of thought into it, and it shows that he found out, and he was trying to figure out a way to get rid of it. So it just shows those little details that, the artist put into this chapter that you could really respect, because it's little things like that that really, make you respect the character and how hard they've been trying to save their friends or whatever. So, besides that, we also got information that they're not just on a farm, which this complicates the issue of escaping now. So, apparently, outside the gate is headquarters. That's not good. If you understand what that means. That means that, from my personal understanding, I could not have understood it completely, so forgive me if I have any details wrong here. But from my personal understanding, outside the gate, okay, when they go for the gate in that little tunnel, the dark tunnel, that is headquarters. Like, you can have probably another couple buildings out there in the distance and shit, which is headquarters and different branches and stuff, and farms and all that, probably where the sisters are, different things. And so, if you walk outside the walls, automatically you're still in headquarters. You haven't escaped. You're still in the territory. That's bad. That's really, really fucking bad, because there's no way they can get information on that. Like, there's none. Because when you think about it, like, once you get out of the farm, that's when there's just no going back. You cannot go back at that moment. And they have to start booking it at that time. So they'll have to find a place to either hide, or they need to find a way to get out of there. And if there's, like, other walls or security blocking different places, GG. GG. So, that's not good. That's really not good. And that really complicates the escape plan so much more now, because it's not going to be that simple. Just passing this wall is not the conclusion. Once they get over this one, they got to do something else. They got to go through security and all sorts of shit, because of the other, branches and headquarters there being outside. So, yeah, that's not good. Oh yeah, so besides that, there is something else I need to talk about, and this is something that could be relatively controversial depending on how you view it, but yeah, I need to talk about it anyways, because honestly, it's really important. So, in this chapter, there was a scene to when we saw Ray, he was being born, and it makes you really think about how these kids all come about. Obviously, the mother gets pregnant, and then she has the child. Well, we gotta think about the children for a second, okay? The children are all different. They have different features and all that. The way they look, they're very different. So, obviously, they have different parents. That would mean that there would have to be, like, probably different male and female compatibility going on here, and then making children. So, obviously, there is a farm going on for breeding-wise, for, a couple can mate and then make more kids. Because, obviously, just using one female, one male, that's not going to work out, because Obviously, pregnancy takes a long time to have just one kid, or even twins or whatever. It takes a while, and there can be also complications in the pregnancy as well. So when you think about it like this, there's just no way that it's just one mother producing all these children. So obviously, there's a farm, not just for the children, but probably for the mothers and fathers to be bred together for the more children could be born. Because we do see a mother that was pregnant in line in this chapter, which was being escorted by the demons and stuff. So it proves that there is a other side to this series that eventually is going to have to be dived into. Where are the mothers and fathers? Because there has to be. Because, like I said, the children look very different, so it would mean that they have different parents. They each have their different parents, so obviously that would mean that there's multiple out there. That would mean that there is a farm for them. So there is a potential possibility that the parents of these children are still alive out there somewhere. Maybe some of them, or majority of them, are dead, but overall, some of them are probably still out there and completely fine. So it makes you question, like, is this going to become an arc eventually? Like, is it going to become an arc to where maybe Emma, and if Norman and Ray survive or whatever, will there be an arc to where they discover where their parents are, and they find out the horror of what's been happening and how children are made in the first place because of how they've been using, the parents like cattle and just mating them together for they can have more, feed for the demons. I mean, that's a big question I have. And that could be a very dark arc, depending on the way the writer wants to take it. And I'm very curious if that's the direction the series wants to go eventually, or would that be too dark for this shonen? We really have to see. So, yeah, that's just something, my question I have. But, yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You'll have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.